young man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while, when will the lonely voice of youth cry what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
Boom. Welcome in, everybody. It's time for a pirate live stream. I've got my Sampal. Hope you guys have an appropriate drink to go along. We've got, of course, our Muppet Cup. Have you considered? You should. Good. You should always consider that. Very important. Of course, we got our skull mug over here. Got some nice happy tracked tea, which fixes your stomach. Technically, it's a Teas-on, not a tea, but whatever, it's close enough. Yeah, Table Rock tea is the best. So why? There we go. That's much better. And then, of course, we have our captain's mug from Pirate Island, in fact. And that's got some Good Earth sweet and spicy tea, which is excellent. If you've never had it, it's freaking awesome. It's a super fruity, very yummy, a little bit of spice, a little bit of sweet. Again, that's probably a Teas-on. It's not technically tea, but whatever. Close enough. We call it tea because we do. Yeah, let's get started. This is our favorite little book to sort of peruse here and figure out what's going on. For Seneca, the Stoic sage should withdraw from public efforts when unheeded and the state is corrupt beyond repair. It is wiser to wait for self-destruction. There you go. There you go. That can be read a couple different ways. As all good aphorisms can. Man, there has been so much going on. I don't think anybody's coming to terms with the magnitude of what we're learning about the world, but we're not covering that today. We're covering competence. We did confidence, and now we're doing competence. They are related. They're not the same, obviously, or I wouldn't have to differentiate them, and they wouldn't be different words. Why I have to say that, I don't know. But man, I have to say that to people nowadays because people are really clueless about how language works. It's bad. It's really bad. We'll go over that in a video at some point too. Yeah. Let's jump right in. Competence is the degree to which you can rely on a person to do a specific task. Not a random task, not rely on somebody to be there for you, right? Or somebody who's going to comfort you. That does not convey competence. Or bully you, right? That also does not convey competence. Those are different issues. It's this task specificness where you can start to invoke the term competence when it is appropriate. So what we're talking about here is a definable task in the world that results in something greater from the scattered parts. So again, it's not Like, oh, I did a thing and things moved. No, that cannot ever convey competence, right? And people can get lucky and it can look like competence because that happens. Like there's a lot of false signals out there, right? But in fact, competence is only conveyed when the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Okay. And it might be a little confusing, but this doesn't require an explanation for or a description of or an ability to predict what you're going to do. In other words, people who can't talk about it can be competent in it. That's super common, actually, right? And this goes along with the old adage about uh, those who can do and those who can't teach. It's a little unfair, but it's not very unfair. In fact, it's a good rule of thumb. Like if someone's teaching something, the odds that they can actually do that thing are actually fairly low in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases. And it depends on the thing too, right? And competence is all about this idea of a higher abstraction, right? Doing the thing well to restore order in the world, which leads to a trust in the ordered world and in ordering or cultivation of the world as such. So competence can't be boiled down to, oh, well, he's really good at this one thing. Again, that thing has to actually create a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. Um, it has to be deliberate, but that doesn't mean it has to be, we'll say, fully spelled out in words first or predicted or anything, right? Um, and the thing is, this cultivation, this ordering of the world, and once you see the world ordered, you also gain a trust in the ordered world, right? As so you say, oh, there it is, it's revealed. It's a process of cultivation of ordering the world, helps you to see order in the world, which gives you a confidence on both sides, right? And this fights homicide, right? Because you have a place to be. You no longer have to worry about all the other things because they're in competent hands. There is an order to the world, and it can be ordered by people, right? So you can now focus on what you're best at, right? Where your best fit is. In other words, I don't have to learn everything about the electrical grid to rely on my electricity because competent people are running the electrical grid. And you can argue sometimes incompetent people running the electrical grid. Yeah, that happens. But for the most part, the electric companies are competent because most of the time I have my electricity. So you can point to specific instances, which would be a mistake, which we'll get into later. Don't worry about that, right? But this comfort, that feeling of competence, either yours or someone else's, doesn't they both apply, right? It can allow you to be more competent. Like when you feel competent, you get more competent, right? When you think others are competent, you can focus on the thing that you're doing and that will make you more competent, right? And whatever it is you're focused in on, whatever thing that you're trying to do, right? If you're sitting down trying to program a computer, understanding Intel's latest chipset, not really important. It might be relevant in tiny cases, maybe doubtful, right? But the fact that you don't have to do that helps you to focus better as a programmer. And to keep track of the electric company and the internet and who made your hardware and what chips went into it and what bugs you don't need that. Right? There are competent people for all of those things that are taking care of all those things so that you don't have to worry about them. You can just focus on the thing you want to do. And it's all about attention and focus. However, when confidence is lacking, the opposite is true, right? So when you're focused in on what you want to do, relieves your anxiety, gets rid of your confusion, enables you to be more efficient, right? Things are where you need them. When the confidence isn't there, even if those things are true, you won't sense them. And so, bang, you get worse at whatever you're doing, right? If you're anxious, if you're nervous, if you're upset, right? All of these things affect your competence and your ability to implement. And that's not the worst of it, right? When we seek perfection, we misread error as incompetence and we see it everywhere. So we go, my electricity was out for 3 hours the other day, which it was. Um, and that caused 4 days of downtime for my disk. Did not make me happy because all of these other people made all of these other mistakes with booting a computer. No, really. Um, and you can read that as incompetence, and maybe some of it is incompetence, right? But the fact of the matter is, power was only out for 3 hours. The thing that went down was not a permanent thing; it was just a boot problem, basically. Uh, the number of bugs was astounding, uh, and maybe there's some incompetence there. But ultimately, are these competence issues? Hmm. And you don't want to misread that further up. You don't want to say, "Oh, President Trump started the war in Iran. He's incompetent." No, he's probably just doing it for a reason you don't understand and aren't aware of. And maybe one you can't be aware of because you're a limited creature. And what the hell do you know about global affairs? I don't know much about it. So I'm going to assume you know even less, just as a guess. Uh, it's interesting too. You can kind of tell these things because the people that know more for sure, they're all clammed up. They're not going on the news circuits telling you what's going on. Hmm. The experts are all quiet. Weird. Weird. Unless they know talking about it won't make it any better. Doesn't seem like incompetence to me. If it does to you, maybe you're dumb. That would be my first conclusion. Because competence conveys safety in the work. And being around competent people is safe because the person knows what they're doing in a deep way, knowing through participation, not knowing through I can explain it to you or here are the words in the books that I read. No, the cost is that they are better than you at that thing. Competent people, a competent programmer is better than you if you're not a programmer. And in fact, if you are a programmer, the odds of a competent programmer is better than you is about 90%. Because most programmers are not competent anymore. Very sad for them. So this destroys the idea of equality and reasserts the idea of hierarchy and creates anxiety to someone whose worldview relies on equality for identity. Oh, I can program just as well as that guy. The odds of that happening are zero. Probably better or worse, but as well as I don't know. And I did people use that as a shorthand all the time. I get that, but also be careful because as the meme goes, the midwit meme modification, right? The guys in the ends often agree. The guys in the middle are the ones that are outliers, which is kind of hysterical. Also not inaccurate, except to the degree that the midwit meme is inaccurate. I have a video about that here, by the way. Very important. So a lot of this will say dislike of competency or lack of discussion of competency or poo-pooing of competency is because of worldview issues and identity issues. If you want equality doctrine to be the order of the day, you got to get rid of competency. You have to, because it points very clearly to the existence of the hierarchy. And all decentralized systems are destabilization because decentralization doesn't allow for competency. It tries to create an equality. That always destabilizes pretty quickly because the world's just not equal. So when you try to force it to be equal, it doesn't work. It's that simple. It just doesn't work. Right? And competency fixes this, assuming it's managed properly, we'll say. Right? You can't make any single person a good programmer. That's not going to happen. I've tried. Doesn't work. Lots of people will never be able to program anything on a computer at any level. In fact, most of the population for sure. There are some concepts that just people don't have access to any more than I'd be a good farmer, right? Or any better than I can play guitar, right? Like these things are not available to all of us, but for the education or something. That's not true at all. We just come with different caps and different limitations all over the place right out of the gate. And the thing is, not understanding competence means that the whole world is dangerous. Have you seen that anywhere? People acting like everything's dangerous all of a sudden. People who were fine 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 3 years ago. Three is an important number in this case. Because without understanding competence, it's not merely that the world is disordered, right? But it is also untamable. Competence, to some extent, is the ability to tame the world, to reorganize, structure, cultivate, alter the world in a predictable fashion. If you have skepticism about competence, that's going to become a problem and increase your anxiety. That leads to this flight of safety, one of many methods that forces people into a distrust of order itself, because all safety is a trade off. And in our fleeing and fleeting freedom, we do not want to trust order. We can trust only ourselves. Individualism for the evil, as usual. Competency conveys a second order trust, which can be broken in our individualism, skepticism, cynicism, and our desire for freedom. And by second order trust, I mean the fact that there is a competent way to program or to play guitar, while it may be, manifest in a single person, the fact that it exists is a second order thing because there's multiple people that can play guitar competently. And therefore, there's an order that is not pegged to a particular person, but that is identifiable independent of the guitar player, independent of the electrician, independent of the programmer. It may not look exactly the same. It may not be exactly the same. But the fact is, that's that second order trust. It's sort of like a trust that the world you're in can be ordered. And we need others in the world and the world we live in, right, to have a pre created order, patterns which emerge to form competency. And the way they do that is they allow us to measure it as well, and conformation to those patterns is also a form of competency. In other words, there are these patterns in the world, and when you're in alignment with those patterns, when you're taking those patterns and revivifying them through your actions and making a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts, people can see that. They can measure it. Right? And that conveys competency. That's what competency is. It's that match. When you see there's a deliberate, as in the process of a deliberation, or the only form of deliberation in this case would be participation with things outside of you, nothing to do with words or language, right? A participation with something outside of you that is ordered and that you know for some reason is right. And you have to invoke Platonic forms here or something, right? Like, how do we know they're right? I don't know, but we do. I mean, that happens every day to you. So shouldn't be really controversial, guys. The fact that you can't explain it just means you're dumb. Doesn't mean anything else. It's fine. You don't need to explain it. You feel it and it's real and it works. Pragmatism to the rescue. Thus, the conspiracy theory. Your worldview isn't wrong because you were wrong or those people you listen to, but because order is wrong. The, the government isn't working correctly because lizard people, obviously. Because it must be those things outside of your worldview, as it turns out, who are responsible. It can't be you. You can't be making an error here. You can't be making a category error or just have a bad worldview or have a mistaken understanding of how things work, like ballistics, right? Couldn't be that. It has to be the lizard people. And the more otherworldly, the better, right? So the more outside your worldview, ancient aliens, lizard people, the CIA, the CIA is not, you don't know anything about the CIA. If you knew anything at all about the CIA, they would be failing. They're not failing. So you just don't know anything about the CIA. It's not that hard. The reason your freedom isn't working out is because others impose their order on the world. And thus the loop is complete. That's why the conspiracy theorists ramp up, right? It's reciprocally self generating paranoia. That's what conspiracy theories are. And whether you found a true conspiracy or not is kind of irrelevant. Yes, there's order. Order is in the world. A lot of things happen due to order and not due to planning, right? So the question is, what's your definition of conspiracy? Because most of the things people call conspiracy are just patterns that were inevitable and any idiot should actually have known about had they studied, I don't know, 10 minutes of history. Of course, no one ever does. So, people who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. That should have told you something about the nature of conspiracy, that some conspiracies are not deliberate. They're not the result of people planning or anything like that. They're just things that always happen this way because that's the way the world is ordered. Right. And that's that loop completing over and over again. You're denying order because it screws up your worldview, it messes with your freedom, and then you notice your freedom's being messed with, and so there must be something ordered messing with your freedom, and you're just not getting the message. You're not cluing in, right? It's not clicking for you mentally that, oh, I'm an idiot and this is a conspiracy and I'm retarded. But that's what should happen in a sane and just world. People will be telling you that and not just me. But I will, I will tell you, have you considered? So sadly, this loop that you put yourself in when you go down the conspiracy rabbit hole is always a noose around your own neck, fashioned by yourself. You see, this circular issue I've just pointed out is good evidence that equality is wrong. It's everything about it's just completely wrong, right? You cannot escape it, right? And hierarchy, which is older than trees, must be cared for. Because that's what gets you out of that loop, that conspiracy loop, is hierarchy, emanation coming down upon you and saying, shut up. You're wrong. That's completely bonkers. And you have to carefully, carefully care for hierarchy with deliberation, with intent, and unfortunately, using our imperfect human abilities. It's almost like original sin exists and explains a bunch of things or something. When we mistake efficiency, speed, accomplishment, perfection for competency, we reveal our video game reality thinking. It's flattening the world. And we get trapped in a binary of did this work or not when that isn't helpful. And sometimes I'm a pragmatist. Did this work or not? Big tool in my toolbox. Use it all the time. Right? So sometimes it's required, but you got to be kind of careful. If you don't know anything about ballistics, it's easy to say, well, bullets should never do this. Really? But have you shot a gun like 1,000 times and figured out if bullets would ever do that? Guns never jam. I've seen guns jam. Guns jam. Particularly at the firing range when you're firing them a lot, that they jam. That happens. Guns never go off when you're not pulling the trigger. Oh yeah, mine did. Like, put a bullet in the ceiling. Unfortunately, these things happen. You don't know nothing about no ballistics. Just shut up. So does it work or not? Well, does it work for your worldview? Maybe your worldview sucks and that just facts are facts and they're outside of you. And maybe that should tell you something about yourself and doesn't tell you anything about the situation you're analyzing remotely because you don't live in an objective material reality. Okay. You live here with the rest of us. You might want to review that original sin thing again, by the way. The clockwork world that gives us, some of us at least, comfort is not there. And the depressing part is it never was. And I mean that technically. So you could say, oh, the internet's working well today. Well, there was a time in the past when it didn't. There will be a time in the future where it will also not work well. Same is true of the electric grid. Maybe the competency moves around, right? And so maybe things were better back then. Maybe there was a day when radios were made better, or computers lasted longer, or cars lasted longer, or actually maybe gas mileage hasn't changed at all in my lifetime in terms of cars, which with only one exception is true. Every car I ever drove, including my 8-cylinder 1978 Chevy, got the same freaking gas mileage, actually. Oops. Yeah, the thing that reduced the gas mileage for newer cars was pollution control. So it turns out if you had a car that was old enough, and not even catalytic converter, because although that doesn't help, much better gas mileage. Sorry, guys, just that happened. I've got the data. Like I don't want to tell you. The Beamer, on the other hand, 30 miles to the gallon a lot of the time. 8-speed transmission, baby, not more efficient engine because that thing is a beast. Car is so fast. It's much faster than my Chevy. Fastest car I've ever owned. The clockwork world doesn't really work out. Like we think gas mileage has been going out. Nope, hasn't moved at all. Not even a little bit. Just not true. Completely false. Were cars better in the past? In many ways. Right. Some things about them are better now. Right. I mean, I can point to this reprehensible device and say, look, I had better control over what was going on with Android Auto 3 years ago, where I could just ask for a song and it would play it. It doesn't do that anymore. The competent people are no longer writing the code for Android Auto. Clearly. Flaked out on us 3 times yesterday. Just, boom. I don't know what's going on. They keep upgrading stuff. The competence in the software industry is gone. It's gone. Completely gone. Gone. It moves around. Maybe those people with competency are elsewhere. I don't know. Atlas Shrugged is worth considering. Ayn Rand was not wrong about a bunch of things, and that happens to be one of them. Ask me how I know. or better yet, don't, because I'll tell you and then you'll be sad. And the thing is, unless you participate, you can never gain competence or confidence for that matter, unless it's a false one. And books are pretty much the opposite of participation, right? They are incompetent renderings of something, squished into language, flattened into propositions. Propositional tyranny, you say? Solo scriptura, say I. Where else could it have possibly come from? In order to use a book, we'll say properly, you have to know enough of the author's context and be a good interpreter of their style. Now, that's not for any kind of book, okay? Myths, that's not true because it's not how myths work. But for normal books, textbooks, novels, any kind of story, not fairy tales, because they're actually in the mythos category, right? Someday I'll go through all this. It's a little hard to untangle. I don't know why people don't know this. I don't know where they got educated. I wish they all went to my school, I guess, because I don't know when we lost this information, but apparently no one knows how this works. Except me, I guess. I don't know. I do the pirate live streams, I guess. Hence, books cannot convey competence from the author to other people. It can't be done. It's not what's happening. Now, they could be entertaining, they could give you important information, they could put information that you already know together in a new way and give you a new perspective. All of those things can happen. Sure, absolutely. Happen all the time. But that's not competence. Can that lead you to competence? Sure. But only experience can increase your competence at the end of the day. You want to know how to play guitar? You can read all the books on playing guitar that you want. I've read them all, by the way. It doesn't help. I know this for a fact. It actually doesn't help at all, even a little bit. You should play guitar every day. It is what it is. Right. So in a way, competence is how well we interact and interface with specific items in the world, with, of course, a telos, a final cause in mind, make final cause great again. Right. One can wield a sword competently. One can be a competent doctor. But not everyone, which is why competence is valuable. Not everybody can be made to be a competent software engineer or systems engineer or computer user, even. And you can joke and say, oh, it's just my grandmother. It's not just your grandmother. I'm sorry. Of course, I worked at a couple places, and one of them, a couple of these places were like, yeah, we make software, and I'm like, oh, that's great. And they're like, yeah, when we're making our software, you got to think, um, you know, how can we make this so easy to use that your grandmother can use it? And I would be like, yeah, well, my one grandmother got a Wang word processing system once for her birthday, and the other one actually worked at Wang. She typed like 160 words a minute. They're fairly technically astute people, more so than I am at certain things. So didn't work with me, but they had the right idea. It was a good system. Just didn't work in my family. It takes training. It takes dedication. It takes passion, discipline, and work ethic to become competent at anything at all. With a few exceptions, maybe, but don't worry about the exceptions. You're not running across them, so it'll be fine. A raw skill and talent, which are different. That's why they're two different words, just in case we're still confused about that. Um, Help as well, right? Obviously, if you have a raw skill, a talent for doing something, the competence is going to come much easier for you and much more quickly with less struggle. But what about where competence is lacking, or it's not there, or it's not available? that is where the competent people have a role to play. They need to be able to and implement. So being able to do something is different from actually implementing it, actually doing it, right? I could write a piece of software that would create a cryptocurrency. It's not that hard, but I'm not going to implement that ever because I have no interest in such things, right? Um, they have to set up the world so that those less able can function within the world, and maybe in a positive way instead of becoming parasitic upon the world, right? But that's an imposition in all cases, by the way. Building something for somebody else is an imposition because they have to use that thing. And you can go too far with this, obviously, or you can go not far enough, which is probably the situation in most cases, right? Or we can put things in the wrong place. Having highly competent software engineers writing a new cryptocurrency algorithm or several of them is not a good use of competence of software engineering because we don't need more of that. Thank you very much. In fact, we need zero of that. It's a different live stream. If you want to see that live stream, comment below. Maybe I'll do it. Competence needs to be where it is needed most. And understanding that requires discernment. Very big topic here. I think I've got a couple of live streams on discernment. Not a very easy thing to convey to people, especially when they lack it. Like, here's an invisible thing that you haven't seen. I mean, this is all to say those who are able should build things for those who are not. I mean, it's actually the function of an economy, by the way. Just saying. You can be pissy about consumerism all day long, but Karl Marx, who really didn't understand anything at all, didn't understand that when he said from those who have to those who need, or whatever, I'm paraphrasing, he's also laying out the case for what he refers to as capitalism. But he's a little dumb, and well, no, that's not fair. He's really stupid. The people who like read him for 10 seconds and don't see the trick are really dumb. Different problem. I mean, a rising tide raises all ships. So if you build stuff for people, right? In other words, if the wealthy give the poor people what they want, the wealthy people are also going to get wealthier, but the poor people have benefited already. So it's not unfair. It's a rising tide raising all ships. Stupid people need a structure and systems with procedures, three different things, right? Which make them more able to participate rather than less able to participate. Right? So less parasitic, more generative, more generative. And creating that takes competence. And so does running it. And maybe creating these systems, these ways of doing things, whatever systems they are, they could be governments, right? They could be corporations, right? It could be a mom and pop shop that sells pastries. It doesn't matter, right? Maybe those are different competencies. Hint, they're usually different competencies and they almost never coexist in the same person. Just kind of give away the whole farm here. It's a well-known problem in entrepreneurship. People talk about all the freaking time. Without well-placed competence, we all get dragged down to the lowest common denominator. For almost my entire life, I learned about this lowest common denominator concept in class, and I can remember where I was and what everything looked like at one particular snapshot because my brain is weird that way. And I never understood why until a few years ago. And then I was like, oh, this concept of lowest common denominator is something that people don't understand. I mean, this is why socialism fails, right? Because the system is only as good as its weakest link. Another reason why you can't listen to Karl Marx because I swear he just drains the IQ points from you while you're reading him somehow. I don't know. Doesn't work on me, but whatever. Um, that's the only way to make things equal, right? Is to, this is, it's in Harrison Bergeron, one of my favorite short stories. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. I mean, what the hell? And I remember these things very, very well. I could never figure out why, but now I know why. It was for this. It was for this moment. I mean, not this particular live stream, but also this particular live stream. There you go. Strange things happen to me. I don't understand them. I don't want to. It's fine. I just go with it. Oh, I'm remembering this. I don't know why. It's going to become relevant in 10 years, maybe. It's fine. It's all good. Sometimes it's just 20 minutes, but very strange. Very Jungian synchronicity. Yeah, don't talk to me about that. I live that. And the thing is, what I'm describing is not just a stupid people problem, depending upon how you define stupid. I have a very different definition, but whatever. Academics suffer the same need, right? They need a place set up for them where they do not have to worry about, deal with, account for, and manage certain things so that they can contribute appropriately. It's very hard to do pure math or particle physics if you have to worry about a 9-to-5 job and being competent at car mechanics or something. It's not going to happen. If they have to worry about their income, they're not going to be able to do this other work. So those systems, the system of academia was set up for those people because you can't make them car mechanics. They're usually physically inept, or often they can't troubleshoot things to save their soul. And people who do pure math and physics are very, very bad at troubleshooting basic mechanical things that are very procedural. And computer problems are very procedural too. Ask me how I know. And they're very bad at that. They're very good at super abstract things, but the less abstract things, no good. No good. They cannot see connections in the real world to real things. Very bad with the materials. Not all of them, but like an overwhelming majority are. And so you set up the system for them where they can just get a grant, or someone can get a grant, write a grant for them, and then the institution gets paid to babysit them, and they have a nice space with, a nice little crib to hang out in and play with their little math toys and their stupid physics ideas and their dumb particle accelerators and everything else, so that they're not trying to fix your car and making it worse, which the BMW dealership managed to do. Maybe there's PhDs working there. I don't know, in the service department. I didn't look. It could be, though. Wouldn't surprise me. It's actually really important for a functioning society. And by the way, we can harvest some of their ideas, if we're wise, and use them for good. Now, you can also use them for war, which is classically how it's always been done. I mean, the Medici family is famous for this. Where do you think half the patronage comes from? Right? Half of it's art and half of it's war machines. And sometimes you get Leonardo da Vinci, who does a little bit of both. Right? Patronage system was superior. We've lost that. We got academia instead. Academia is collapsing. Isn't that good? But this is why listening to experts is dangerous. You and I should not listen to experts, except in specific circumstances, maybe, but I have my doubts. We should listen to leaders, because experts often aren't competent. Oh, I'm an expert in economics. How? Are you competent in economics, or are you just an expert? Yeah, well, they're just experts, right? They haven't done any economics because you can't. It's not a thing that you can do. You can participate in economics. Maybe you can set up an economic system, and maybe it will work, and maybe that will make you wicked smart or whatever, but maybe that's a coincidence. And I only say that because the economics, the long history of the economists going down to South America, destroying an entire economy, and then coming back and going, oh, I don't know why my thing didn't work. It's because you're incompetent. That's why. It's not that hard. You listen to leaders. Leaders are going to take responsibility. You're not going to take responsibility. You're going to go back to your freaking lab. So you're going to do. Go back to your little crib, your little academia thing. Oh, so nice. We'll give you a squeaky toy, just like I used to give my dogs. You'll be happy. It's fine. As long as we don't send you down to South America, that's a mistake. Oh, go fix this economy. No, 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 bad, bad. And the thing is, lots of correct answers are useless, completely useless. But we value knowledge so much and we think knowledge is propositions that we don't realize that almost all the propositions you're ever going to be given are completely worthless. I don't mean worthless. I mean worth absolutely freaking nothing. Let me be abundantly clear. And make no mistake, and this is the same pattern on the other pole of the competence scale, this academia thing, right? Think carefully about this proposal that I'm going to make here. It might explain a lot of what you are seeing around you today. Just looking around, right? Smart people will stupidly propose going to another planet. Right? I'm not picking on any one of them because there's multiple of these idiots, right? To start over, as in start society and civilization over again or whatever. I think this is a good idea, but they seem to, right? Or to redeem a bad idea. Well, I know we did this before and it didn't work, but let's try. That's the socialism play, right? Because ideas are valuable to them. Overly so, more than action. And that's the problem. Right? When ideas are more valuable than action, then results are a side effect of an unintended consequence and something to be thought a way of, right? Like, oh, we can just think our way out of this or think this until it vanishes or something. Much like violence. Violence isn't going away, guys. Just gravity's not going away. Violence is going away. The sun will continue to rise in the east and set in the west, or at least when it doesn't anymore, we'll be dead. Um, it's not going away, right? Truth is not going away. People lying is not going away. Children are not going away. These things are not going away. But in ideal land, they're just whatever. The need to raise cattle and slaughter them, not going away. Still got to eat meat. And people in the realm of ideas cannot be precise in your speech, value competence. So they denigrate everything that allows for it. Not only competence itself, but anything that would allow for competence. Flyover states, oh, just farmers working the land, as though these people could do better. They don't know how to grow anything. They don't even want to get their hands dirty. I mean that technically. They're germaphobes. And the thing is, when they try to reorder or restructure society, and they have, everyone starves to death. That's like the first thing that happens. Very consistent pattern. Right? Ideas do not trump action in the world. In other words, participation. Even if they seem to describe or explain or predict those actions. That's usually an illusion, by the way. And just so you understand what's happening there, describe is about the here and now. Explain is about the past. Predict is about the future. And you can just swap those out conceptually and you'll understand a lot better what people say they're doing and what they're actually doing. Because often people will say, well, let me explain this to you. And they're not explaining anything. They're just describing something. It's important. People are confused. So you don't have to be. I just gave you the formula right there. And notice too, in this age of gnosis, where knowledge as mere propositions is the highest value, that we prefer the story. Although it's usually merely a description or explanation or prediction over the actuality. We don't actually want to know in a participatory way why that software is broken, that wouldn't be useful. Even for me, it wouldn't be useful. I do explain this on a live stream not too terribly long ago on a different, not on my channel. I said, "Oh, it's wonderful that Twitter released their algorithm publicly. I don't know what I would do with that. I'm a software engineer. I can write algorithms for Twitter. That wouldn't be a problem. Uh, I just don't know what good it is to see the code. And I could write a better algorithm, probably not that hard, actually, at the end of the day. Uh, yeah, so 35 years experience in the industry, so that might help. But I don't know what good seeing their code is. Even if I could change it and propose changes to it, the code is not really going to help because the inputs matter. The thing that processes the inputs into outputs is great, and it's, maybe it's important. But if you don't know what the inputs and outputs are, you don't even know if the code's correct. There's no way to validate it at all, by the way. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, we should use Twitter X because their algorithm is public." Why? The actuality is you can't change it. And just because you know it's public, it doesn't mean you can predict what the output's going to be from the input because you don't have the data required to do that. We don't want production to happen in the countryside and then cities to be primarily consumptive, but they are. Like, that's just the way it is. And cities don't produce anything really or much of anything. Uh, Occasionally, they'll put a factory in a city or they'll build cities around factories, but that's for the purpose of workers and population density. It's usually a side effect. Science as knowledge via propositions over the messy work of interacting with nature, other people, and ourselves. That's really what we're talking about here. And why, you may ask. And it's a valid question. Why do we prefer story over just getting things done, making things happen, executing competently? And those things that are wrapped up in competency are not subject to logic, reason, and rationality. So in the age of gnosis, they're just valued less. They're not necessarily done away with, but they're valued less when in fact they should be the top value, right? The explanation of the thing, the story behind the thing should be of secondary value. That's actually why you can have multiple stories of the same thing, and that's fine. Because as long as those stories get you to the thing, it doesn't matter how accurate they are. And what's your standard of accuracy anyway? Uh, Jordan Peterson was onto that early. The certainty of these things that you can be competent about is not mathematically calculable. Makes the math people very upset. The autistic math psychopaths very upset. Good. I hope they suffer. It's fine by me. But we need an explanation to get us out of where we are stuck. So story it is. Not saying no story, although it might matter what stories you're telling and why and when and to whom. Audience matters, right? And do you want a story more like an instruction manual, 12 Rules for Life, or more like a myth? Odysseus, anyone? And it's like, oh, all our instruction manuals in academia didn't work. They're failures. This is a we're gonna reinstitute story. We're gonna rewrite the fairy tales. We're gonna discuss Christopher the Mirror Maker Nolan's movie, and that will be better because it's a different type of story. It's not like 12 Rules for Life. It's not like a mirror instruction manual, right? Um, you're still stuck in academia world. We're still stuck in age of gnosis. Like, you haven't changed anything at all. Just the players. Lovely. Same problem, different players. And all this avoids the randomness, boredom, and the uncertainty of participation, of being here, commenting in the live chat, coming to the movie club tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. This is all messy. Can't logic, reason, and rational your way around it. Very no fun. And because of all this, we're stuck in a competency crisis. We're in the age of gnosis. We're bringing these propositions. There's a propositional tyranny. There's a procedural tyranny. See the knowledge engine model. I have a video on that. You'll understand that a little bit better. So, how do we fix the competency crisis? Step one, stop listening to academics about things that aren't strictly academic. And by the way, when I was growing up, when somebody said, oh, that's academic, that used to mean boring, obvious, and unimportant. That's actually how we used it. This is boring, obvious, and unimportant because we know what it is and it can be easily done. And it's trivial. Things that were academic were trivial when I was growing up. That wasn't that long ago. I'm not that old. It's not like I was a pirate on the Caribbean back in the day. We're not going that far back. Watch. Do not listen ever for competence. Watch for competence. You can measure competence by looking at historical accomplishments too. If there aren't any, I would be suspicious. The worst combination is no historical accomplishments whatsoever and lots of yappity yap. That guaranteed not to be able to find any competence there. Participate to gain competency. Do something, start a community. You could read a book about how to start a community, but until you do it, it doesn't work. You don't gain any competency. Follow competent people and support them however you can. Make their lives a little bit easier. Bring them some coffee. I don't know, whatever it takes. Do not get stuck in the thinky-talky land by hearing logic or logical arguments and dreaming up competence. People who make logical arguments are usually charlatans. Charlatans make logical arguments all the time. Only accomplishment signals competence, not words. And you can use historical examples, right? People have a history. You can go back and look at what they've done in the past. Oh, they've done this in the past. Huh, okay. And hopefully you can see this is why art is so attractive. If people do not understand your art, you can explain it to them. And if you give them a good story, bingo, it's good art. And you are the author. You control the audience. You control their thought by telling them this is what the art means. You should never have to do as an artist, by the way. And everyone has a gateway into cooperation, alleged cooperation, through words alone. Same with academia. You write the right white paper, right? You put it down somewhere, you publish it, and bang, you're part of the club. Even if you plagiarize, they want more people part of the club. They're not principled. No. And words make it too easy for people to fake competence. To just tell you, oh, I did this and I did that. Did you though? Or did somebody else do that? Oh, so you've tried 3 other times. You had 1 success early on and 3 other times with different groups of people and you haven't been successful. Well, then it wasn't you. How was it? So be careful how you use words and how you listen to other people's words and who you are listening to and what their motivations might be. All right, my friends, that is all I have. Ixnon, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind may not have been accurate. That is well spotted, sir. Well spotted. All right. That is what I have on this particular chart. Oh, look at that. I kept it to an hour. That's unbelievable. If you have questions from a live chat, or if you're willing to come on camera and stuff, you can jump on in and ask clarifying questions, and I will do my best to answer them. I hope that was enlightening to some extent. Why does this thing fall down all the time? And how do I make it stop? I don't know. Someday I'll buy a new camera. Give me lots of super chats. I'll buy a new camera with the money. I thought about that. I was going to save up all my pennies. Uh-oh. Here's trouble. How you doing, Christopher? Good to see you.
I'm doing all right. Good monologue. Easily 9 out of 10. So,
Oh, excellent. Okay. Good. Good. So I've got authority, confidence, competence. Authority still being like toppity top, I guess, but that's fine. Good.
something
Good.
like
Did I
that,
miss
yeah.
anything? What did I leave out? Because you didn't get to hear the notes. So
I don't know. I don't remember anything that you left out specifically. So,
I'll take that as a perfection. That's fine. I'm okay
close
with
enough.
that. Close enough. Perfection accomplished.
Total victory over evil. So,
Exactly. That's usually how I feel after these monologues. It's they're doing some good too, so that's helpful. Oh, that slides video. Gustav's really liked that one. He loved the roll up.
oh, the models one.
Yeah, the models
that one.
all in one.
Yeah, that one is really good.
You're not the only one who thinks so. So that's good. That's gonna help. It's gonna help him. He's highly competent at like everything. Disgusting. Keep people like that. And he's European, which just makes it worse somehow.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. He really should be like royalty. Like he absolutely should be. It's a crime. It's a crime against humanity that he's not king of something. So,
We can make him king of something after we take over Ireland, probably.
No. That's Ireland's taken care of. The future king of Ireland has been born. Adam's on it.
Yeah.
By the time Adam gets done with him.
Yeah, no, we need Gustavus to be king of somewhere else.
Yeah. Maybe he can take over like the Holy Roman Empire for us.
Something, yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, he could be the Holy Roman Emperor. We haven't had one of those in a while. Things were better back then. This isn't a hard equation. Anybody can figure it out. I will get on that. First, I got to take my castle back in Ireland and kick out the Protestants and make way for the future Irish king to take over.
Right.
And then we'll move into Europe and we'll clean that place up.
Yeah. I've decided that I need to build a big army here in Alaska and just march across Canada in that direction.
Excellent. That's perfect. That's perfect. Go east, young man. Conquer our wayward lands that have rejected us. Not for long. Wussy Canadians. We're gonna roll you. We're gonna roll right over you. Goodness. So what? We got any questions? Clarifications? Nothing? Did I nail it that good?
I think so. I'm sure Sally could come up with a good question for us, but
she ain't here.
Yeah.
She doesn't love us anymore. It's artists, they're flaky.
Yeah, yeah.
He's busy getting us the board
Right.
game art. So that's it. We have everything we need now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Board games coming soon, coming real soon.
Yes.
Movie club tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.
Yep, yep. I've got all my stuff ready for that. So
Me too. Well, maybe not all. I'm going to review it all. I watched the movie today, so.
yeah, the thing I still need to do is actually write down all the names for the characters in there.
Oh no, I skipped all that. I just whatever. Can't keep track of the character names anyway, so I don't know who the characters were. It's in a way, it's a fast-paced movie. The thing I love about that movie is there's so little dialogue. It's all 3.5 hours and no one
Yeah.
talks. It's great.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a thing that is like really good about old movies is the amount of not talking.
Yeah, because they're focusing on conveying information through other means, and it's just great. It's so experimental too for a lot of it. Like, I don't know if you ever seen 12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men is like that. It's really
I don't
good.
think I've seen that, or I might have
It's
seen
one
it
of
once a long time ago. But
Sidney Lumet. It's actually one of the top 10 or something films of all time. It's right up there
Mhm.
with Citizen Kane and all that nonsense. It's Casablanca, and yeah, you gotta watch 12 Angry Men. Unfortunately, it's an evil legalistic psyop, but the film itself is brilliant. It's so too bad. I'm like, no, this is actually wrong. Like, why? It's Mr. Clever being clever. I'm like, oh, Sidney Lumet,
Mhm.
what did you do? What did you do? But yeah, it's a brilliant film. Like for filmmaking, like oh, wow, 12 Angry Men is just next level stuff. So good. Yeah, be curious if you watched it, if you notice what they're doing in there.
I'll also put that on my list of things to watch here. So
Mm. Yeah, it's basically the jury room of a murder trial. That's the whole thing. It's amazing.
mhm.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Really impressive stuff.
I mean that's might be interesting, but how much talking or not talking does Christopher Nolan use?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything in the West is exposition, right? Like we're just very
Yeah.
exposition oriented, right? And part of that is just reaching down to the masses. And this is one of the reasons why I don't
Hmm.
like plays or ballet, and like ballet in particular, right? I don't like opera. I don't like them because I don't usually have enough referent non propositional referent. So I can't understand what they're doing. Like I've seen pieces of the Nutcracker and I'm like, I don't these symbolisms
Hmm.
aren't symbolisming for me at all. Which is weird because
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not I'm not bad at symbolism or anything, right? But also if you don't have the references, like you don't have the connection between the symbols you're trying to convey through the dance, then
Hmm.
it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Occasionally I pick up on a pattern. I go, yeah, the pattern's boring. So that also doesn't work because it's not exciting and new to me at all. It's just like, well, whatever. That happens every Tuesday. Like I don't. It's not important.
Right. Because the
So
Nutcracker has like a bunch of references to a bunch of different like cultures in the dances, I believe.
I don't know. You tell me, man. I've only watched pieces of it. I can't watch the whole thing. I'm like, I don't. It just gets
Well, I
super
mean,
like, oh, what the hell's going on in this thing? I Same thing with opera. I watch opera and I'm like, I don't understand any of this.
because the plot in that, like, if you describe the plot of what happens, it's like over right away, and then
Mhm.
it's just this long sequences of dances that are happening,
Mm.
and all that they're watching. That the girl in the Nutcracker whatever are watching all these dances happen, and that's like at least half of the play.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me that people don't know and understand that. But then if you want something to appeal to a broader audience, and this is like when you don't understand hierarchy, you just don't like because people do this. They used to do this all the time in Boston. It just drove me nuts. They'd be like, we need to just take, kids to more plays and stuff. And they take the inner city kids to the plays. And I'm like, that's not gonna work. And it's not that
mhm,
it never ever worked, right? Because occasionally you'd get one.
right,
But you're
yeah,
talking about 1 out of, like, 1,000. It's a really bad hit
mhm,
rate. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, like, what are you guys doing? You just think this is gonna be far more effective than it's gonna be, and there are better ways to solve this problem that don't involve being really dumb. But they don't seem to know that for whatever reason. They did lots of
yeah,
experiments in New England like that. It ruined whole neighborhoods forever. Idiot, you know?
yeah,
Just
and
expose them to the things we like, they'll be civilized. That's not how civilization works.
mhm, yeah, yeah. That was in well, and for the Nutcracker, most my initial exposure to that was the bits they used for Fantasia. So
It is? What?
yeah, the Nutcracker music was used for sections of Fantasia.
Oh, it's the same music? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, again, I don't know, use references,
so,
so it doesn't help me at all. No referent, no connection.
right,
And that's the problem. They don't really understand that. The when you grow up in the water, you think everyone has access to the water because you don't know there's
right,
water
yeah,
there. And then it's like, no,
mhm,
that's just your water, and they're not in the same aquarium. So they have different
mhm,
water. People really don't. They really struggle with that. And every time it works, because again, it works like 1 in 1,000 times. They're like, "Oh, look at this," and
mhm,
and then you get, sending people with subpar grades to Harvard, and that makes them angry because they know they didn't earn it. And then, yeah,
right, yep,
that's bad pattern, very bad pattern.
mhm,
They become president and they wreck the United States by being purely evil. It's not great. It's not great. Just saying. Want my healthcare back. Thank you very much. It was working fine before you screwed it up. Would have been great. I'm not bitter much. And the competency issue too is like that's a voting issue. People bring this up all the time. They're like, "Oh, these voters are stupid." Okay, so you only want competent voters. You want to filter voting for competence.
right,
I'm not necessarily opposed. I think that's the wrong filter, by the way, but I'm not necessarily opposed.
yeah.
Uh,
We can just filter voting by land ownership, and that should be good enough.
Bingo. That's
So,
exactly what we should do. Yep. Yep. That would be perfect. One vote per land. You want to live on somebody else's land, you get no vote. They get the vote for you. That's it.
mhm,
Perfect. Country worked well back then. I'm just saying. Why not a coincidence?
yeah, I mean, that's the competency thing here is that the founding fathers actually seem to have been fairly competent in what they were doing, and we're
Mm,
definitely not better than that now. So,
they were because I mean, part of the I think again, you can't understand the United States unless you understand. So it was a big filter. Like no lazy people were coming to the United States. Like that would
right,
have been.
yeah,
They knew better. They're like, oh, I'll die
mhm,
because
yeah,
they would actually be dead. Like it's not.
mhm,
I mean, even a bunch of the competent people didn't make it. Like
right,
the incompetent people weren't coming here. They knew better. They were like, wait a minute,
mhm,
there's none of the nothing. There's no safety net. There's you're living like in the woods. Like
yep,
I moved to the city to get out of that stuff. I'm not, and everybody who stayed in the country, they didn't even know about the New World. They didn't know it was an option. So you filtered out a bunch of people that,
mhm,
were competent. And so, yeah, the people that came here were competent, and then their children were competent because you had to be. You had no city to
Mhm.
rely on. You had very little government help of any
Yep.
kind. You know, I mean, they had to defend themselves largely. So you grew up with a bunch of skills. And so the hierarchy was automatically immediately instantiated, and
Mhm.
it wasn't forced because there was no one here to force it. And so they were all
Right.
LARPing equality, having been filtered for competency, and then having just naturally been in a hierarchy the whole time
Yeah. Yeah.
without, I mean, they talked about it, right?
Yeah. And that explains why everybody trying to copy the U.S. did it wrong because
No filter.
they didn't have the filters in place first. Yeah.
It's weird to me that I'm the only one that talks about that I can find. I'm like, somebody else must have
Mhm.
noticed this. Can't only be me. It's kind of obvious. I don't know, but whatever. I guess if you never think about it that way, but
Mhm.
still, eventually, you'd think all your dumb theories that don't work, you'd run out. But no, no.
Well, no, see, those are my theories, though, so I
Yeah,
really like them.
exactly. This is my worldview. Don't you mess it up with facts and logic. How dare you?
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, exactly. That's exactly the problem. Very depressing. Very, very depressing. But also, it's a problem. It's a big problem. People are, you know, so-called ideologically possessed. I'm like, no, no, that's a bad way to think about it.
Mhm.
It's a really bad way to think about it. There's a much better way to understand these things, but I guess that's all you got. Maybe you're not
Right. That
competent.
Yeah, that's the at what point is a bad frame? How does a bad frame compare to having no frame at all? It's
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and if you could accept that you don't have a frame at all and accept that you just need to be told what to do, I think that would be a much better situation. So,
Mhm.
but man, you brush up against people's individualism and it's all over.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, like my tweet today, my Twitter today was awesome. Like, yes, knocking it out of the park today on Twitter. Only
Nice.
everybody saw it. Nobody actually sees my Twitter. So,
Yeah, that's the thing. People talk about Twitter and Elon Musk buying Twitter and everybody thinking that he ruined Twitter or saved Twitter or something.
right, right,
Whether he should have used that money for something else. And
right.
because basically, I think it seems to me that what he did was basically he bought it and changed the way censorship worked on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I
So,
mean, that's all you ever do is that you get rid of censorship. That's like everybody complains about this constantly. Like all the bots. I want the bot censored. Okay, I
mhm.
agree. So you just want a different type of censorship with different rules. But
Yeah.
you're not anti-censorship, even though you say you are. You're just dishonest to yourself and others. Different problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, people do that all the time. Drives me absolutely nuts. I'm like, there's no state of no censorship. That can't happen. That's ridiculous. That's like I live on a planet with no gravity. No, you don't. It's like, you're never going to have that happen.
Mhm.
You can go into space where you can't live and escape most gravity, but you're not going to be on the planet and living
Right.
no that's mutually exclusive conditions.
Yes. Yeah. Mm. But yeah, and
Censorship lives matter. That's all I have to say.
censoring lives matter. I don't know. And then there's Christopher Nolan seems to be competent at the thing that he does
Oh yeah, for sure.
with, you know,
And
we
they
can say
they
he
misread
makes,
that as arrogance or
yeah.
pretentiousness. And I'm like, no, he's just very good at what he does, and he's
Mhm.
getting a little impatient with you people being stupid and not just listening to him when he tells you exactly what he's doing.
Mhm.
You're always trying to anticipate what it really means. No, he means exactly what he said. He wasn't trying to fool you at all. Dipshit.
Right. Yeah. Mhm.
I'm much more impressed with him after that interview, that Beijing interview. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
this guy's next level. He's Slavoj Žižek level, although Žižek is just a jerk to people. Nolan's really polite. Žižek's still angry that no one listened to him when he was right. It's like, well, get over it, buddy.
Yeah. People not listening to things is like Tuesday. I mean, every day that happens.
I know. People get all upset. I'm like, I think you were just believing that when people were trying to placate you and shut you up, that they actually agreed with you and believed you when that never happened. They were just like,
Right.
please
Yeah.
be quiet. What do I have to say to this person to make them shut up?
Yeah. Yeah. The really big problem if you think that, propositions are super important. And
Yeah, and that they represent reality when in fact they
Mhm.
can't do so very well in the best of times.
Right. Yeah.
I heard something recently, now I don't remember where it was. It was in an unusual place though, and they were talking about like no two people see the world the same anyway. Our perceptions are different, blah blah blah. I'm like, yes.
Mhm.
Why can't we get the academics to understand this? They even talk about enough white papers on it, and they ignore that fact
Mhm.
all the time, and then
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
down their little road. I'm like, ugh.
Right. Yeah. People. Yeah. Well, I mean, you think you see that no two people see the same world the same way, and you think that's a problem that you have to solve, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, their whole thing is if you knew what I knew, you'd behave the way I want you to behave or expect you to behave. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you get like, the Lindsay Clancy trial, and half the people are like, well, obviously we need to do something about this, and the other half of the people are like, she did nothing wrong. Her husband murdered the kids, and it's like,
Mhm.
what? How are you reading this so differently? But they are, and it's like,
Mhm.
what are we going to do about that, guys? Maybe trials like this should never be on TV ever. That would be a good
Probably. Yeah.
start, right? Like
Mhm.
Frank case analysis. Hello. It's hello back, I guess. And then nobody's, no one's addressing like even with, you know, with the Christopher Nolan movie, it's the same deal. No one's addressing. Everybody saw a different thing.
Mhm.
What's up,
Hello
guys?
there.
Hello.
Well,
Welcome.
you guys are exactly right. And cases like this should never be publicized.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's a real problem because people have different perceptions, and
It really is. I used to work in mental health, and the thing is that when you have cases like this, people that are vulnerable and feel more exploitive in these kinds of cases, they are the ones that will form a community and then reach out, and then it's really confusing as to why they are exactly reaching out, because each of them have a dimple or a different mental health aspect of this case. See, this case is really simple. It is about her getting or going to a prison, or going to a mental health institute. That is literally what this case is about.
Right.
And that is the entire indifference. And I guess giving it any public attention, uh, yeah. But should we be surprised? I mean, it happened. It happens with Charlie Kirk. It happens with every
Yep.
single case. And I feel, and I don't even live in the States, but I cover a lot of American cases, and there is this, yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's this feminine side that wants to be heard, and this is the way that they are wanting to be heard. But it kind of feels like more innocent project than actual competence when it comes to court cases.
Yeah.
But that has been a trend that has been a long time going. So
Yeah, people are preferring feelings over, what actually happens in the world, and that was, that was a big part of the monologue. Like, no,
Yeah.
you don't want to prefer your version of the world or your words or somebody else's words. Like, I remember this is years ago on Clubhouse. One of these guys is a fairly bright guy, and I don't know what part of Europe he was from, but he was European. He was so drunk, and he was like just talking about Elon and the rockets, and Elon's rockets were not even that successful back then. This is quite a few years ago, and he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna get to Mars, and everything's gonna be better." And we're all like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, well, once people populate Mars, they're just gonna, And one of my buddies is he's got a YouTube channel, Lantern Jack. He actually has a PhD in ancient philology. So he's effectively a philosopher, and a PhD in philosophy. And he was saying, like, we don't know what a better form of government is. Like, we actually just don't know. The ancient Greeks tried 1,000 plus forms of government, and we know a lot about different forms of government, and he was so despondent. He's like, what? No, we must know a way to make Elon must have a plan to make a better government that will solve this. And I was just like, well, the solution isn't government anyway, but man, if that's what you're relying on,
I mean, before the U.S. started, right? I mean, you guys already were there, and I think it was approximately like 16 years, if my historical accuracy is right, that essentially the Federation came together and started the United States, right? And there was this one guy that had essentially, before the 13 colonies came together, there was this one guy that said, we need to work together because what we're doing right now isn't working. Because all the different rules, all the different of taxes, that doesn't work. So I can't remember what his name was, but he studied all these like political and governmental things. That's, for example, why Washington has monuments of different aspects of certain cultures, right?
Right.
And he was like, there is no perfect governance because there is none. So they combine it into every single aspect, and that is essentially why you got the Declaration of Independence. And I think that it's kind of lost. And nowadays, I think it is everywhere because governments, they don't care about the people, do they? Because they should be voted in. And the question is always if they are voted in, because I do not feel represented by the people that I vote for, and that's why I stopped voting.
Well, you can't be represented in a democracy.
Yeah.
Right? Only the majority of people who are convinced by a good rhetorician. And the ancient Greeks wrote about this. That's the funny part. And the problem with the U.S. is absolutely nobody, especially the people that live here, understand that we have a two-tier government. The federal government and the state government have no overlap. They both have a similar constraining document, but the Constitution, does not constrain states the way it constrains the federal government. There's two levels of constraint. And then those states are, at this point, 50 experiments. Like explicitly, they're 50 experiments in government with a very loose oversight that was specifically designed to solve the problem of not having a king. right? Because they didn't want
The
it.
monarch, yeah.
Yeah, well, they didn't. They did not want one of those, and it's ironic because the success is the fact that we focused on trade, and the reason why we left England was because of the East India Company's influence on Parliament. But I'm
I'm
not
Dutch, so
sure.
I know all about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure they understood that. Like, there's no indication that I'm aware of that anybody understood what happened when you beheaded the king in England. The downstream effects were just a catastrophe. And then I just recently watched this documentary on it, and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, all the things that happened. I'm like, it occurred to no one at any time that the Puritans were the bad guys. Like, that wasn't abundantly clear. The guys shutting down theaters and canceling Christmas. It didn't click, huh? Hey, these guys might not be the good guys. These guys might be team evil.
But that is the same thing what General Patton said after the war ended, right? We might have been fighting the wrong guys.
Yeah.
When it came to
Right,
the Russians.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's always about politics, right? So yeah,
Now it is. It didn't used to be. Everything before was about what we now call religion, but that was. Now it's not, right? We've made it not about belief to stop the quote wars of religion, which is just basically Protestants shooting each other all the time.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we had the war as well. We broke free from the Spanish, then to end up with a civil war between Protestants and Catholics.
Yeah. Well, the government was holding, the king in particular would hold things together. Even post-Reformation, the king would hold things together, because in the original conception of the Reformation, which granted broke down immediately upon the death of Luther and Calvin, zero time frame.
We're really Calvinistic here.
Well, but the sovereign was in charge, like explicit. That's what they wanted. It's not, everybody thinks they were trying to get rid of the Pope. It's like, no, they were just moving papal authority to the sovereign. That's not better.
It starts off with farmers then eventually get more power, and then the farmers I don't know, for some reason then start a cult or whatever. And so on and so forth. That is how human hierarchy, I guess, works, and always has been so for since the Babylonian times.
Yeah, when it emerges, I mean, I think the reason why you have the myths set up the way you have them is because the myths are just a recognition that some people are born blessed. Some people are born with better abilities than others, and those abilities should be respected, right? And then how they're dealt with might be different, but you need to account for that. Like, if somebody is really good at giving good judgment from a legal perspective, then they should be a judge. Like, and you should just listen to them, and you should not try to work out, like, well, what do we do? Do we all vote for it? It's ridiculous, right? Because voting only gets you in trouble. So.
And also, you don't know, like, the person who's really good at being a judge doesn't know that all by themselves.
Right.
I mean,
they have personal experience as well, right?
Yeah, but they need the contrast from other people who aren't good.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
there is no law.
I was completely convinced, and many people today are, but I was completely convinced when I was younger that anybody could learn to code, because it's so easy and it's very straightforward. And man, I had some success teaching people to code for sure, because I'm a reasonably good enough teacher, and I know coding pretty well. But the number of people that couldn't learn to code at all under any, there was just no way to get them there. There was no way. It's absolutely stunning to me every time, because back then I was completely convinced, because it's so easy, and it's so easy for me because whatever reason, but it's not easy for other people. Other people can't think abstractly in the right way, and they might be able to think abstractly enough to fix a car, right? But they can't think abstractly. Right. I know somebody like that, actually. He's a better mechanic than I am, and I'm a pretty decent mechanic, but man, he can't code. I code.
It's a good thing that I can do. It's a good thing that I can do both. studied IT.
Yeah.
I'm both a car mechanic.
Well, and those skills are, I guess for Vicky, we call them exaptable for sure, right? Like if you understand how things are connected, that can go back and forth between physical things and non-physical things. But some people can't deal in pure abstraction very well. They actually
Mhm.
need to see things. They actually need to see how they fit together physically. And I just don't have that particular problem. I can see
Well,
how they
well,
fit together
well,
conceptually. But a lot of people that are fitting things together conceptually can't see how they fit together. They just put things together and call it a day. Like they'll,
Right.
these are
Yeah.
the idiots that came up with, social justice. Okay, that can never be made any sense out of in any language. That is a foolish two words to try to put together, because there's no
Hmm.
such thing as a society without justice. And justice doesn't make sense unless it's part of a society. Those words are like on the same level of analysis. So if you throw them together, they don't make any sense because they're dependent on other things. And so you can't just throw terms like that out there. And there's so many terms like that. And this is all academia's fault, ultimately.
and the
You got no one
institutions,
else
yeah.
to blame. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think institutionalizing things is a wrong concept, anyways, because I think that we are kind of missing the innovators. Like we are based on such a concept of modern technology that outside the abstract is like a wrong thing to do. Like the brothers Wright, for example, they had like competition, and this is kind of like an American thing with the with patents, right? Thomas Edison versus Tesla, so on and so forth,
Yeah.
and Colt versus Smith and Wesson. And we don't have that anymore. We don't have a healthy sense of innovators. Oh, and I think it's interesting what you said about coding and about abstract thinking. I think coding and abstract thinking is totally different because abstract thinking is more a different psychology. Not necessarily psychology, it's a different realm because it does not function in the world with normal thinking. So people who do not use a computer, you can think that they are stupid, sure. But that is not what the Wright brothers said when they invented the airplane.
Yeah, but that was primarily engineering problem, right? And they made bicycles, so they actually knew how things mechanically fit together, right?
Oh,
And so
so you think that the combination of computer and engineering is like an abstract absolute for the.
no, I mean I think that, well, the concept in computer programming of a variable is an abstraction because it can represent anything, right? So or anything of a certain type. Hopefully, typed languages are far better. It's you get into trouble when you don't do that. Whereas, you know, in a car, like you can't replace the tire for the bumper. Like that doesn't work, right? But in a computer, I mean, actually, you can kind of really put things together in very, very nonsensical ways, and they can work really well. But you have more constraints in the physical world, and so it's much less abstract. I mean,
I get that, but would you consider yourself an engineer?
oh yeah, yeah, engineer and architect for software and systems. Yep, worked for a long
For
time.
sovereign system. So the entire
Yeah, system.
determination already is an abstract of what is original engineering. So it's a soft word.
I mean, engineering doesn't necessarily wrap itself in abstraction. So, in order to fly a plane or build a plane that flies, I've actually been to Kitty Hawk, to the whole thing. It's a big deal. Actually, there's far more there than I imagined. I mean, it's nuts. You can walk up the hill and the whole 9 yards. But their display on what was happening with the Wright brothers there on the island, it's amazing. Like they were making a bunch of guesses and using a bunch of math, and then they would retune the math based on what happened because the math is wrong all the time, right? Especially back then. And then they'd have to go back but the problems they were solving, because they really understood what was going on pretty well by the time they got the Kitty Hawk. The problem they were solving was basically steering. That was their big thing. So there was a power problem that they knew about. We need more power, and we need better steering. And they already knew, like, oh, if they had all these wind, they had anemometers up to measure the wind. They had all these wind conditions that the wind has to be going this way. I mean, that's why they were there. The Outer Banks is absolutely gorgeous, but like if you're there, you realize, oh, the wind is almost always either dead or coming from this direction, and that's it. Right. And then it's very often gusting because you're on an island. Basically, you're pretty far away too. Those islands are pretty out there, even though you can reach them by car. They're pretty far out there. And that hill, which was the only hill there at the time, a fairly significant hill, as it turns out, it just set up the perfect set of conditions. Because the problem for them was, well, back in Ohio, the wind is all over the place, because in the continental U.S., the wind is almost always all over the place. The only place you get stable high-speed winds is on the coast, where I mean, it gets weird down here. Like, one of the things that can happen is, like, if you're in Florida, it rains every day at 4 in the summer, every day at 4 in certain parts of Florida. Actually, every day, 4 p.m. rain. Does it start exactly at 4? No. But, every day at 4, it's going to rain. You're going to get wet, right? Not for long necessarily. It might only be 5 minutes. It might be 20 minutes, but every day. And so you get weird conditions like that on the coasts that you don't get elsewhere. Part of that's the Gulf Stream. And like I said, part of it's just you're on an island, and it's just the way water regulates the weather, right? And so, because they were able to reduce the number of variables, which is always good engineering and good science in some cases, they were able to just work on as much as possible. They were iterating faster than everybody else. Everybody else is testing inland, right? There was a guy in France. There's a guy from France in somewhere in South America. I think it was Venezuela. I don't remember. Right? He was doing it. There was one guy who had all the resources. The government. He couldn't do it. Right. But they were like very much like Edison. We're going to run the same test over and over again, change one variable each time until we get it right. And so they knew about the power problem, and they understood what they didn't understand. They were working out the steering problem. And once they worked out the steering problem, and the reason why you need the steering is because of the nature of wind and lift, you actually have to be able to steer to go straight.
Then they kill the guy.
Things don't go straight on their own. So, yeah, I mean, it was a dangerous proposition, and they made it as safe as they could. Granted, if you fall off that hill, like straight down, yeah, it's not going to be a pretty day for you. But if you're in a plane, the odds that you're even going to get hurt badly are actually pretty small. So just because it's not that high a hill, and as long as you're surrounded by stuff and you're coming down at less than terminal velocity, it's you're just not high enough up. It's really ideal. Once you're out there, you can see right away ideal conditions.
You're saying that they did a bunch of math in order to compensate with how much energy they needed.
Yeah, they did a ton of engineering and math. They have the instruments there at Kitty Hawk. They show you the actual instruments they were using on site and stuff. I was there by accident. I wasn't even going to Kitty Hawk. I was visiting a friend of mine, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a little busy. Why don't you go down to the museum and check out Kitty Hawk?" The kid's just around the corner from his house, So I went there, and I spent like 2 hours there, just like in amazement at the engineering accomplishment and all the tools they were using and how primitive they were by our standards, and yet they were able to figure it out. And no one else because there were a ton of people working on the problem, but they weren't able to work it out because they weren't in the right place. Like, you needed someplace you could run those experiments over and over again, day in, day out. And they could,
So essentially the same conditions, but they killed a military leader, right? That they were wanting to have a contract with.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people died. When you look into the history of flight, like, a lot of people died. A lot. People on the ground, and people in planes.
No, I'm talking about the specific Wright brothers demonstration, where one of the Wright brothers was extremely injured, and that military leader, where they were going to have a government contract of, The only thing that it needed, and it's really simple, has nothing to do with mathematical concepts. It's just a stronger motor, and they refused
Yeah.
to work with the guy. They refused, for example, to work with Henry Ford,
Yeah.
and Henry Ford gave that other guy the patent, and he learned that guy on how to do those court cases.
Mm. Well, that was the rise of litigation in the U.S. It's the same as the rise of like all these patents and stuff, right? Because you got Marconi stealing from Tesla, and you've got Edison doing all kinds of crazy things, and trying to get rid of Westinghouse, and it's all once you view it like these guys all knew each other. It's like, oh, okay. It was we were talking about this last night at an event, and I was they were saying, oh, Anthropic's gonna go public in a $1 trillion IPO. And I'm like, yeah, but these guys are all playing a game in the same way that Bezos and Musk were racing to be the first one with a successful rocket launch into space. No one remembers that, right? And then Bezos was like, well, I'm gonna be the first one to put people up there, and then he puts the flakes up in space. And then Musk is like, well, I don't care about that. I'm going to be the first one to the moon. These are just games that
But
wealthy people play because they can afford them. This is not, and flight was the same way.
Right.
And so were a lot of these like early radio and electricity things, because those guys all knew each other, and they were all in competition with one another, and they were all wealthy, and good for them. But like, it's not a magic thing. They just, they have a similar
so,
goal, and that's where they're competing.
so do you think, as somebody is obviously more smarter than me, that if you watch those SpaceX launchers come back from the Starlink, that they are really able to catch them while they go back?
Yeah, I think if you learn one thing in engineering, if you're an engineer long enough, you realize pretty much anything you want to engineer can be engineered, right? But the problem is the more precision it needs, the more specific it has to be. And so there's a trade-off, right? And so like you can't engineer a flying car that's easy to use and goes point to point, right? But what you can do is engineer each of those pieces and then later engineer a way to put them all together, right? But then the problem, because we've mostly done most of that, the problem becomes the power source, right? And so it's like, oh, so we've got an engineering situation, but we've got a power source problem. And that's actually what happened with with self-driving cars, right? So you've got one company exactly that can do anything like a self-driving car, and it's actually not that good, but that's a whole different discussion. Well, why can't everybody else do it, right? And then Google's theory is actually in the engineering and math answer to driving cars is Waymo. Waymo was the one that has the math right. It's not the right answer because it's not an engineering problem at the end of the day. There are engineering problems, but that's not the problem. The problem is more like, well, how do you integrate these engineering components to make sure the car can drive well? Because Waymo's whole theory was, oh, well, if you have enough driving data, eventually you'll catch all the driving errors, which is wrong, by the way, but whatever. That's what they think. And therefore you'll be able to make a self-driving car. And that's the theory that they were operating on. I don't know if that's changed, but that was the original CEO's theory, or at least the CTO. I think it might have been the CTO who said that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And they said, we're going to win because we have more data. Like, we just have more hours of driving data from more cars than anyone else, because they bought all that data. They bought all that telemetry from the cars in the US, basically. But it just turns out that that's actually not true, right? But if you engineer the right things in the right way, right? Just like with Tesla's rockets, the SpaceX rockets, it's the same sort of thing. Like, you hear Elon Musk talk about why they're not carbon fiber rockets. And from an engineering perspective, it's obvious that carbon fiber is the wrong answer for these rockets. But it's not immediately obvious unless you know a bunch of things. I learned a ton of stuff. I listened to the talk, and I'm like, I didn't know that. And some of the stuff I knew, but I didn't like carbon fiber is super porous. So of course you can't just make the skin of the rocket carbon fiber, because if you pressurize it to the levels you need to, it'll just leak out. Like actually, it'll just leak out, right? So I knew that it's porous, but I never thought about, of course you can't. You have to use something else too, right? So it's not lighter, as it turns out. And then of course there's other things which I didn't know. So like, because you have to use cryogenic temperatures for the rocket fuel, when you put steel into those cryogenic temperatures, it's actually just as good as carbon fiber. It just happens to be much lighter and, like 10 times cheaper.
Well, it depends. If you use carbon fiber, you need a counterweight for that.
Well, you need to line it with something. And
to
also
balance it.
when you make the carbon fiber, there's two big problems with making carbon fiber. One is you have to put it together in strips, and it has to be more or less perfect. And that's really hard to do on a large object. And the other one is you need to build an autoclave that's bigger than the whole item. So you need to build an actual autoclave at a huge scale, which Elon did, by the way, but
So
it just turns out it's expensive and it's not better than steel at the end of the day. At that application, right? So steel, carbon fiber is stronger than steel at normal temperature and pressure, but not at the temperature and pressure needed for rockets. Then the math changes completely, right? So those are just engineering problems. But it's you can't use just engineering to get there, because again, you have to realize, carbon fiber is porous. This is an application where porousness is a problem, right? Steel's properties changes at temperature. This is a case where that's to your advantage, right? Steel's a lot cheaper. The fact that, so it ends up only being slightly heavier and fewer steps to build it, because just steel, like anyone can just make a steel rocket. You make steel at any size, it's super easy. So yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I knew most of those components, but I didn't. It's just not so all the problems are engineering problems, but the bigger problem is how do they interact, right? What's the proper integration? So you can solve engineering problems, any engineering problem you want.
And how do they measure up for the fuel capacity that goes up? Because that's less of a counterweight, right? So when fuels goes up, it disperses fuel, which is less, and they need to make up for the power that they have, so they can't make it heavy. And that is essentially the controversy, right? That, they need to launch it at a certain date, and they need to also do it at an angle. I can't remember what that problem is called again. It's a mathematical problem. Instead of where you go straight, you go in
a trajectory issue.
Yeah, exactly. But when you lose weight, like fuel, then you need to compensate that.
As you burn, you have to. But see, that's a straight engineering problem. That's a ballistics engineering problem that's actually solved, right? As the weight of the object changes, what's the proper trajectory calculation? And the weight can change for a number of reasons, right? But all the problems in energy are energy to weight ratio problems for moving things, right? Any object that's actually moving with its fuel source. Or they're straight generation problems, right? And so the reason why cars are a problem is because of battery density, right? So you want an electric car, your battery density problem needs to be solved first. Personally, I think they're doing that wrong. They should go back to Edison batteries, but it's not the stream. And so you run into these issues where you're trying to get a better density. But then there's other issues with batteries, like lifespan, and because they over time the I think it's the anodes get covered, right?
Acid,
and then you can mitigate that with carbon fiber, like normal off the shelf carbon fiber, actually. But almost nobody does that. There's I think there's an Exide battery plant in Australia that does it. You can modify your own lead acid batteries do that, by the way. So that solves one of the problems, right? But like very infrequently do people combine them all. It's actually one of the things that Musk does well is he realizes that there are these inefficiencies in the engineering, and he gets the engineering pieces together and then solves them that way, right? And
Does he do it personally?
well, I think a lot of it is done by him personally because he's the guy picking the team members. And actually, well, like when you hear him talk about the carbon fiber versus steel rocket thing, I'm just like, man, he really knows his stuff.
Yeah,
Like
it's
he
really
has to
brilliant,
really
isn't he?
understand that, I didn't see it, so
Yeah,
and I know
especially
most of those things. My uncle made carbon fiber. Like he was one of the pioneers. He was working at the company that pioneered carbon fiber, and he was one of the guys working at the lab that made the purest carbon fiber, mainly because my whole family's OCD. So if you tell us to do something, we're going to do it exactly the same way every time. So his stuff was really high quality. So
Yeah.
I know a lot about carbon fiber compared to your average person, just because
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that carbon fiber, even though that's light and it can apparently it's heat resistant as well. So all those
Yeah,
temperatures that they go upstairs. Apparently,
but
it can compete for the fact that it's a really good material, which
but
is
it's not heat dissipating. So on the re-entry,
it
the
loses
steel
volume though.
wins every time because the carbon fiber gets hot spots and the steel doesn't. And so what ends up happening is the ultimately the final rocket is lighter in steel because you need more heat shielding for the carbon fiber rocket. So it actually ends up slightly lighter.
So you would argue, yeah, essentially it becomes more dissipating. So yeah, eventually it will come more later when it enters orbit.
Yeah, there's an engineering trade-off in carbon fiber, and that engineering trade-off is that, well, yes, it takes heat better on a spot-by-spot basis, but because it reflects the heat, it doesn't dissipate heat. And so the problem is, well, if you're not dissipating the heat, then whatever hotspots you have as a result of re-entry are going to burn through your carbon fiber. Whereas steel, because it dissipates the heat across the entire structure, that the no spot gets too hot to break through the steel. And that's one of those things that, like, how would you figure that? I wouldn't think of that immediately, right? So when he described that, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. I understand it from an engineering perspective because engineering can solve these problems, but also like there's some magic in understanding and putting these things together in that way, right? It's not immediately obvious. Yep. I don't know where you went. But yeah, engineering is fascinating. It just doesn't. You really can solve a bunch of problems in engineering, but it doesn't help you at the end because there's always another thing that you have to account for, and everything in engineering is a trade-off. Yeah, you learn that in software really fast. Like, well, you can do this really quickly, right? Or you can do it across a large data set. But if you want to do it really quickly across a large data set, you need different engineering entirely. You have to rewrite the entire thing from first principles.
Right.
And that happens a lot. It happens with everything. Right. Like the way you hand build a car and the way you build a car on an assembly line, completely different. Completely different. For very good reasons. Cooking is the same way, right? Yeah. I used to watch Gordon Ramsay used to do the show called Kitchen Nightmares. I don't know if he still does it. But
I know he used to. Yeah.
So the early version in England, because he did it in England first, of course. If you've ever seen the early version of the first like season or whatever that he tried this show, it was great. He went to this one guy who was starting a restaurant, and basically what he was doing was he was taking normal home cooked kitchen recipes and trying to crank them out at restaurant speed. And Gordon's like, you actually can't ever do this. It's impossible. People will not wait for a from scratch home cooked meal and pay you money. They're not going to do that. is never going to happen. He said, but you could offer them something pretty much as good with these certain, pre-prep things that don't compromise the taste, because Gordon wouldn't do that. Gordon Ramsay is
Mhm.
he's a food snob. So right. And
Yeah, yeah.
so you just have to know about these little trade-offs. You have to understand that, oh, well, you can't have home cooked meals at the speed of restaurant food. It
Mhm.
just can't be done. Like, there's just a
Yeah,
hard
you
limit.
wanted one of the home cooked meal thing. You can't like offer the menu. You have to like cook the home thing and say this is what we're having. And
Right, exactly. Exactly. Right. And it, it gets decided before you can sit down to a meal, right? When I go to a
Mhm.
restaurant, I go down to the restaurant and then I read the menu and then I make my
Mhm.
decision while I'm at the table. And then they have
Right.
precious little time to get that to me.
Mhm.
Right. And just the way it is, right? Whereas here, I never think about it. I just sit at the table, whatever food's in front of me, I eat it. And
Yeah, yeah.
occasionally someone asks me what I want, and then I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, man, that's confusing, and I don't know what I'm gonna want by the time it's dinner." Like, I don't like, who knows? Like, it's very hard. But see, and that's the difference between, like, pure engineering and competency. And I've known really good engineers who just they couldn't put anything together, so they couldn't make any progress because engineering doesn't solve problems, but competency does. Competency, because it's all
Right.
about
Yeah, yeah.
measuring the engineering trade-offs versus the goal, for example.
Mhm.
Because there are always engineering trade-offs that you have to make. Do you make the battery in the car bigger to give it more runtime, but then the car is heavier, and so past a certain point, there's a well-known curve, right? Past a certain point, you're
Mhm.
you're making the car significantly heavier, but getting less and less range for the pound. There's just a curve there somewhere. I don't know where it is.
Cool. So,
Um,
so what you're saying, Mark, is that we should make Final Cause great again.
We should make final cause great again. That is precisely exactly what I'm saying. It should be better known, I think, is part of the problem. It's just not well known, but actually it should be highlighted probably at every live stream because it's super, super important. Right. And the competency is more about making final cause great again than it is about, we'll say, good engineering or anything else. It's really about getting the thing done that needs to get done because there's a goal in mind, and that is important, right? Because competency isn't, sometimes it is, but it isn't ever only the ability to do something reliably,
Mhm.
right? Because sometimes reliably means doing it completely differently with a different implementation.
Mhm.
And that was sort of one of my specialties when I used to consult was, okay, you're stuck with a problem, like you have to use agile programming techniques, which is just garbage for large, in a startup they make perfect sense, but outside of a startup they make no sense at all, right? And so you've got this system that isn't well suited for what you're trying to do. Well, how do we make an implementation of agile that gets us to the goal? And the factors turn out to be, what's the team like, what's the goal, right? And what are your core restrictions? Because there's always core restrictions, like, oh, we can only use
Right.
one
Yeah.
programming language. Like, I actually consider that to be a heresy, but whatever. What do you mean one? You don't want a software product that's all in one language, like, not of any size. Otherwise you're just a script kiddie. Go away. Like, I program in 8 languages. I want to use at least 3 of them in any project. They're different languages suited for different things. Like, why would you stick to one? Right?
Right.
So
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
more of a competency issue, right? Like, which language should you choose for which part, right? And then
Mhm.
you could do the same thing at a different company and come to different answer to that question because they have different
Right.
goals
Yeah.
or because they have different restrictions or whatever, right? And that's more like that's a it's not really a different type of competency, but it's a different factor in competency that no one really considers. It's very hard to know. If you're not super competent at something, you won't know about that. And you get guys like Elon Musk. Elon Musk, as near as I can tell, is just competent person. It doesn't really matter what environment he's in. He's got patterns locked in. And so he's able to
Right. Yeah.
make any number of businesses work. I mean, the car company Tesla was supremely unsuccessful until he got there.
Mhm.
And he wasn't the first one in the industry. But he was the only one to make it work. Still.
Mhm.
People now have his pattern and they can't copy it. That's a high level of
Yeah,
competence.
yeah.
You know, as much as I hate Teslas and I think electric cars are stupid, like props, he made it work and aside from making those freaking dumpsters on wheels that he calls trucks, you know, mission accomplished. It's fantastic. Those things, I just every time I see one, I'm like, are rocket launchers really illegal, or can I just use one on this thing?
I
It's
mean,
always
look,
a thought in my mind.
they look like the kind of car that you would blow up in a video game. So, I mean, you should be able to use a rocket launcher on it,
Exactly.
right?
I'm like, this is clearly a video game. I clearly want to shoot this thing. If I just had the accoutrements, I would. Wouldn't work on the convertible, which at this point, I wonder if I'm ever going to get that car back. Idiot. Battle between the dealerships. The one dealership thought the part needed to be replaced. The other dealership said, no, it doesn't. Fixed it. So, I guess that was good. Oh, anyway, let's wrap this up. It was nice to get a new visitor. So I hope he comes back in the future because it's always nice to have new people on. But what do you think? You want to wrap up competency for us, Christopher?
Yeah, I think a lot of competency is about your ability to participate in a whole,
Yeah.
and the way you do that is to be better because the world is a whole thing that needs you.
I heard that somewhere. I wonder if we have like a graphic or something we can exemplify that with. Yeah, and I think we're so skeptical now because we've had incompetent people running institutions. We're skeptical of institutions and structures and every other thing, which is, you know,
Right.
at the end of the day, more just a side effect of beheading the king, as it turns out.
Yeah,
Which
you.
never England just really screwed it up. They screwed that one thing up. They never should have done that. But I think now we're just so skeptical of competence, and it's such a judge, like a competent person that can just do the things that you can't do easily.
Mhm.
It just really, a lot of people get upset, and I'm just like, I love to
Right.
watch it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't like most of what Elon Musk is doing, but I really admire the fact that he does things so well. Even like I said, the things that I don't like. So I find that to be awesome. And a lot of people just find that to be cumbersome or oppressive or whatever, upsetting, and that's too bad because,
Mhm.
being competent is a way for you to be better and to make the world better, and the world needs
Mhm.
you. So you should get on that, basically, like, that's all.
Mhm.
So, listen, everybody, I'm gonna do something for Friday. I think I had it in my head at one point, but it's gone now. But we'll figure it out. There's a lot of places we have to go from here because we're at this layer of it's all the same layer of abstraction, authority, confidence, competence. This is all it's you know, they're all related because they're all on the same layer of analysis, as Peterson would call it. So we'll figure out what Friday's live stream is going to be. As far as I know, there's no blocks to Friday, so join us again next week, 7 p.m. Eastern,
Yep.
Friday, and tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
Saturday,
Join us
10
tomorrow
a.m.
morning for the
for the movie
movie
club.
club thing.
And we're doing Seven Samurai. It's 3.5
Mhm.
hour movie. So you have precious little time if you haven't seen it. It does have an intermission in it already, although we
Yep.
just had to take 3 little breaks because people got to go to the bathroom and get snacks and drinks and all kinds of things. But I watched it in one sitting because I'm not a wimp.
Yep.
Um,
I did that last night as well. So
And so join us, even if you haven't seen it. It's basically a practice that we can do publicly to show people different perspectives and what people see in terms of pattern. We're not movie
Mhm.
critics. That's not what we're doing.
Right.
Although it is a wonderful movie.
Mhm.
But join us, ask questions. If you've filled out the document there, and the instructions are on the video on the website or on the Discord server, the Market Wisdom Discord server. Um,
Mhm.
you know, you can follow along. You can give your answers in the live chat if you want. That's fine. And anybody that wants to come on stream, you can ping me on Discord and I can let you in. But other than that, have a great week. Take care of yourselves and each other.